Hello there. All right. I see a few of you hopping on here. All right, well, as I see a lot of you hopping on here, we're going to have a conversation today. I'm in my classroom right now. It's like super weird being in here because I've only been in here a couple of times, and I think about, how much time we usually spend in here. So it's just like I kind of miss it a little bit. We have all of our things where we store everything and whatnot. So each time I've come back in here, it's been a little eerie or different, if you will. My name is Abby Schukei. I am a middle school art teacher in Nebraska, and I know that these last few months have been pretty wild. And if we went back to May, when I'm finishing up school here, I didn't want to think about what it was going to look like going back to school because frankly, I really had no idea what that was going to be. And I was like, I want to enjoy summer. I just want to kind of live my life safely at home and do the thing. But now I've come to this stark realization that in approximately 1 month, I am slated to have kids back in my classroom. So for those of you that are tuning in, I'd love to know where you're joining us from. Like I said, I'm in the middle of America in Nebraska, and I realize that some of you have just finished up the school year, while others of you, you might be going back to school around the same time that I have. So unfortunately, I think it's time for me anyway to start having that conversation. And I know depending on where you are in the world, your state, or are you in an urban, metropolitan, rural area, all of the plans look so different. And I know this week, especially, a lot of states and districts have been they've been rolling out their plans, and it's a little bit overwhelming. So I see a lot of you guys from Texas, Minnesota, kind of all California, everywhere. Let me know when you guys go back to school. Are you slated to go back in September? I saw on the comments earlier that some of you might even go back at the end of July, like in a few weeks, or at the beginning of August. But I know I do not envy the decision makers right now, the superintendents. That's a hard job to make, and I know that having to have guidance from the local government and the health department, there's so many things that we have to think about, and it's really easy to be selfish to our needs as far as, they're not just thinking of the art teachers, they're thinking about everybody. And so I think we have to give everybody a little bit of grace when we come into that. And some of up there, I kind of timed out there, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. But hopefully, for me, my district has come up with some plans as far as we are tentatively scheduled to go back to school with students in the classroom come the second week of August. And but we have 3 other plans, like a hybrid plan, full staff or full students and staff, and then full online remote learning. And so there are some, we have some good guidance for some of that stuff, but there still leads to a lot of questions. One of the things I know, students and staff at my school are going to be required to wear masks, and that's going to be a challenge in itself with some of that. But we're all navigating this new normal together. So you guys know, like I said, I am a middle school art teacher, so I'm going to be coming at you with kind of the secondary perspective today. Next week, Sarah Krajewski and Lindsay Moss are going to be on here kind of chatting specifically to all of you elementary teachers, and I think that I'm going to be able to provide you some insight and ideas on that as well. Yes, somebody just says, as much as I want to go back and see the kids, I don't know that it is safe. I think a lot of us feel that way. Unfortunately, we're tied to our job and we don't get a say in a lot of that. And so I think there's a lot of internal struggle there. But I'm coming at you from the secondary perspective today. Lindsay and Sarah will be on next week talking about elementary specifically and how they might have to move to that art on a cart position, which I actually had to do many moons ago in my first teaching position. But I just kind of I don't have answers for you. I think we're all navigating this together a little bit. But I just hope to facilitate this conversation and just give you some food for thought. And I know that some of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today is going to be specific to how my classroom is set up and how I see my students and the schedule that I have. So that's all going to vary and differ, but hopefully we can kind of come up with some ideas together to make it work for whatever your situation was. So if you didn't see yesterday on the Art of Education University's magazine, I published an article that was called How to Return to School During a Pandemic, even though we don't know how. But it does pose a lot of questions and just things to think about. And we'll make sure to, head to the magazine to do that. We'll link that up again after this chat here for you to reference to. But one of the things that I told you that my school is going to, I teach 7th and 8th graders, we will be wearing masks. For those of you that might not know, I'm a big tie-dye enthusiast, and I do a lot of tie-dye just on my own. It's kind of, it's become my choice of art form in the last few years, but I have been making tie-dye masks like wild. I have a wholesaler where I get them from, so just specific because I purchase a lot of things. But this is going to be our first project when we go back to school. It doesn't take very much dye for you to do with students. You can buy just plain white masks like these. I think they're available on Amazon. I don't know about the different sizes. These were probably just a medium size, if you will. But they fit adults. They definitely fit the middle school students. And so that's going to be one of the first things that we do. I know that's been a big conversation, whether or not you're pro mask or not. Like I said, that's something that my school is requiring. So we're going to do it. And so I think, there's a big conversation of how do we get our kids to do that? And I think ownership is one thing. And if we can try to do that by bringing in some masks or making them, I think we have to try. It's the least we can do. So you can get a lot of these for pretty inexpensive if you're buying them in bulk. And like I said, you can get them on Amazon. And definitely there's a blank, you can buy blank stuff at this website called Jiffy Shirts, which is really nice. They have some different things as well. So that's kind of one of the first things I'm thinking about as I'm going back to school here. And I'm going to move around my room here in just a second. But another one of the things that we're thinking about is, okay, how am I going to sanitize things? How am I going to clean things? No, Sarah, so the school will be paying. Well, my school is giving students masks, but as far as us making them for art, for our art class, that'll just come from my budget there. And I guess if students want to make more, they can probably give me $2 or something like that to kind of go from there. But sanitizing things. So, we have to think about, okay, what is our supplies going to look like? And I know one of the things that I think we think about a lot, at the beginning of this pandemic, it's still hard to find Clorox wipes and cleaning things, but I think it's important to know that, our schools do order those from different places than what we just do for at home. So hopefully there won't be as much of an issue there. But so one of the things I'm planning on doing is having a mixture of sanitizer that students will come in and as they meet them at the door, we'll spray their hands and go from there, because I just don't know how possible it is to go to the few sinks I have in my room at the beginning of every class to watch. We'll talk about clay here in a second. But And this is kind of the same route I'm going to plan to use with sanitizing my materials and those types of things as well, because I think we're also all coming into this idea of my class sizes are typically on average 28 to 30. I'm probably going to have to rearrange my tables because I can only fit 2 or 3 students at a table anyway. So, I don't know how students aren't going to share things, especially if they're sitting at a table together. I've been doing my research as far as, what are the things we can do, and I think we all kind of just have to make those decisions on our own, which is a little scary, but we're not fully going to know what to do until I think we're trying it out. But I'm going to take you here a little bit, talking about cleaning supplies. So I know for me, my students use a lot of choice as far as the materials that they use. So I was a big fan of, I'm going to flip the screen here. So I was just a big fan of setting out these bins of supplies. And I don't think we can do that anymore because students will be grabbing them. So I, like I said, I do a lot of choice in my classroom as far as materials. So I think we're going to have to institute some new plans as far as how we what materials we're giving our students. So one of the things that I already use, so we're talking about clay and whatever, I have these little bins that I would typically put on the tables, 1 per table. Students would share them. My plan is to increase these boxes, and in here, these are the different clay tools that the kids would be using. And typically, like I said, I only have 2 or 3 students at a table. So that means those students will be sharing them. Now, there probably will still be instances where they have to share these things. But things like slip cups, I'm going to try to give students their own that they will keep in their art storage space so they aren't sharing those types of things. But my plan for these materials, and they store really easy and they stack, is that, at the end, so let's say I use this kit with my first hour class, and I have my second hour class coming in. They're not going to use these same kits. I'm going to put those over to a dirty section, and then, take my sanitizer stuff that I plan on using. The kids, they're going to have to help me with this too, to kind of spray, let them sit, and then maybe they are going to be used for that next hour, not the next hour, but my hour 3 class. So I kind of kits like this for just about anything. So here we have the oil pastels and the different tools in there. So this is going to be kind of a way that I try to manage those materials a little bit. And like I said, I know it's going to differ a little bit, but I think we're going to have to stagger the use of the materials. So, if my 7th graders are using clay, I'm probably not going to have my 8th graders be doing that, just so I can have time to clean things a little bit. So let me take you, so just so you know, this is probably the cleanest my room has ever been right now, but right now I've always had my room in a U shape, and I don't, I'm going to have to rearrange those probably. But I so happen to have in my room individual storage spaces where kids can store their stuff. So I'm lucky in that way, and I think it's going to be like that a lot in the secondary setting where, I can assign kids to use a paintbrush, and that's the paintbrush that will go in here. One of the other things we start off the school year with is kids make their own clay palettes, and so we're still going to be doing that, and they put that in their art bin, so that's one way we can cut down on sharing materials. And then that way, if we probably end up eventually going back into a hybrid model or learning at home, they'll be able to take these things with them and have a chance to use them at home there too. So that's just kind of a glimpse as far as where I'm talking about, where I have some storage where students can kind of share that stuff a little bit. So clay questions. This place is kind of scary right now. It's very hot in here. But one of the things that I'm actually lucky to have right now is I didn't, because we weren't at school, for the last 3 months or whatever. I still have like 500 pounds of clay left over, which will really help me with my budget, as I know that a lot of us are kind of worried about that. So one of the things that I will plan to do with that clay, and I do it anyway, I used to always assign like a clay bag per table, so those 2 to 3 students would be using it, and it was their responsibility to store. So whatever project that they were making, they would go in, and that's the clay that they use for the entire thing. They didn't get any more until all of that was done. It also forced them to be responsible for keeping that clay wet and not drying out. So I'm gonna still continue to do that, but instead now of having kids share that at the individual tables with the 2 to 3 students that they sit at, each student will just get a bag that they will be sharing from, and well, not sharing from, using themselves to kind of cut down on that. You know, I thought about reclaiming clay a little bit, and you know, I don't know enough about the science and the virus of, you know, how does it stay in clay. I don't think we know the answers to some of that stuff, but you know, I do know that if you use vinegar or bleach to kind of get some of that mold out of clay, sometimes it works. So I don't know, is that something that we could do for reclaiming clay purposes? And I know that there's still, like I said, don't have all the answers for you here today, but just kind of giving you some ideas. So continuing talking about clay a little bit, one of the things for those of you that might be going on like a hybrid type of model where you are only going to see your students like 2 or 3 times during the week. If students are working on projects, clay projects, they might like dry out more. So one of the things, because they're not there working on them daily. So one of the things, I'm going to show you this here that I've just always used. So you saw my bins, and students would individually store their stuff in there with like a paper towel or a wet paper towel, or just spraying it with some water. But for those projects, you could create a damp box with, you know, here would be, this is not a damp box, but filling it with plaster and then you keeping moisture inside of it is a way that you can store that. But this is just an under the bed box. And I have so many of these that I can it's great for if you have limited storage too. So what I'll do is if pieces get too big for students' bins, they will either store them, I'm sorry, I'm reading your comments here. When I would reclaim the clay, sometimes students would have a reaction to the mold. Yeah, sometimes, you know, people are allergic to mold, and that's why using that vinegar and bleach in there kills that mold to kind of get rid of that. But so in here with these clay pieces, you know, you can individually keep them, wrap them, and put some more moisture in it. And I would always spray them, and then you just put the lid on it. So this is a good way if you think that you're going to be having to store clay pieces for an extended amount of time. And then I like to just put the lids on them, and then you can stack them up if you're short on space. So those are just some other ideas for you as well as we kind of go back to it. So, and one of the things that I've been thinking about as I think about going back to school is I know that at some point in the school year, we will probably be, you know, at a hybrid model of doing online learning as well as, you know, having A/B days or alternating. And so I think that if you are able to go to school and, you know, in the spring, we didn't have any chance to like prepare for it. But if you've kind of been thinking about the programs or the softwares or the platforms, you know, whether it be Google Classroom or Schoology that you're going to be using with your students, if you can like teach them those expectations of how to use it when you're in class to kind of prepare for it, I think it'll make the transition of hybrid learning or remote learning so much easier. So if you're gonna create, you know, videos in Google Classroom when students are at home, why not start practicing that now if you have the technology access in your art room to do that. That could be something that's going to, how to email your teacher, videos. Like, there's so many things. I remember, like, when I was in middle school, we would take our timed keyboarding test to see how fast we could do it, and, basic word processing programs, and the kids don't really do that anymore. And so I had a kid send me an email, and the entire email was in the subject line. And it was like sentences and sentences long. And I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's something definitely to be thinking about. So teach your students those skills that you expect when you're there in the classroom with them, so that they can be more successful on those hybrid days that they're not at school, or they're just doing that remote learning there. So I know that it's going to, our hands are kind of tied, as we want to keep distance from our students, and we want to keep those numbers down, but we're bound to the sizes of our classrooms. And so one of the things that I think we do a lot in the art room is we demonstrate a lot. And, I have a central location table that I always call students up around to go in and demonstrate that. And we're going to have to change those ways we do things a little bit. You can't have 25 kids coming up and circling around you if we're trying to keep them distant from one another. So one great solution for that is videotape your demonstrations. You guys probably have been thrown into doing that with the online learning anyway. It's something that I have been doing for years, just to save on materials, my time. It kind of clones me. But that's going to be a great way to help keep the distance and have your students not moving around. So if you're showing them, how to shade a sphere, take that extra time to maybe just videotape it. You can play it every single class. Then you have those resources for those students that maybe aren't at school, or when you are doing remote learning eventually. So yeah, those are just some of the ideas that I've been thinking about, and I know that we will continue having this conversation for a while, even as we're back in school. So like I said, that's kind of all I've already been here for about 25 minutes, and I know we could probably talk about all of this stuff forever and not have answers. But I think it's just important to adapt and just do what's going to work best for you. Do your research. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what's going to work best for you and your students, and it's not going to be easy. But I think after this next year, we are going to feel like we can do just about anything. I really appreciate you all being here today, and your great feedback and questions, and hopefully you were able to get some ideas here. But like I said, come back next week. Sarah Krajewski and Lindsay Moss are going to be here talking about more from the elementary perspective, and I know a lot of you are going to be maybe on a cart next year, and so they're going to be talking about that a little bit. So thanks for joining me here, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.